This is such a great question, and I'm so glad you asked it because I know you're not the only one that struggles with this. Now, I don't know your situation or your relationship with the Lord, so all I can do here is speak in generalities, and then hopefully that will be helpful to you. Now, the thing about love that people commonly misunderstand is we have this experience that makes us feel a certain way, and we call that experience love. But that's not actually love. Love is a truth, and it is an attribute. And it is when we come into the presence of either that truth or that attribute that we experience love. The problem is that on this earth, everything is fallen. And so oftentimes what ends up happening is we have a relationship with someone who's supposed to teach us what love is, usually our parents. And through that relationship, they'll do things and they'll say that this is love, but the things that they're doing are not loving, or they're not in alignment with what is actually love, or they're dishonest, right? People manipulate things. They say, oh, I'm loving you, but they're really being manipulative. And so we get these false representations of love, but because that's our only representation, that's what we attribute it to. The other place this happens is in relationships. We get into lust or infatuation, and the feeling that we have is extremely overpowering, and it feels like love, when in actuality, it's just infatuation. And so we again tend to misattribute that feeling that we're having to love. And so when we come into the presence of God and we experience the attribute of love, because he is love, right? Like God is the source of what actual true love is. Or when we come into contact with the truth that is love, right? That God is loving us, or we come into the contract of love as truth, then what happens is we misinterpret it as something other than what it is. I know for me, I had a strained relationship with my dad for a lot of our life, and I knew intellectually that he loved me, but the way that he expressed his love was through correcting me and trying to call out the best in me, and then providing for us, and then having integrity. But none of that felt like love. Like I didn't experience the connection with him of feeling loved. I just knew that he loved me. Whereas with my mom, it was completely different. I had that experiential love with her, that connection, that relational part that felt more like what I would call love. And so for a long time, my relationship with God the Father was not strained, but I was never able to feel his love. And it wasn't because he wasn't loving me, and it wasn't because I wasn't interacting with his presence, and his presence is love, right? It wasn't because I was not interacting with those things. It was because my understanding, my ability to interpret love was broken. And so in his presence, I would experience it as intensity, and in his truth, I would experience it in some cases as even as like harsh, or as discipline, or as correction, when in actuality he was trying to free me. A good example I could give of this is my cat recently passed, and he was with me for about 16 years, and I don't connect to things emotionally very well, but he was one of those very few things in life that I had connected to emotionally. And so when he passed, it was probably one of the most painful things I've ever been through in my entire life that I can think of. And in the latter period of his life, when he was passing, he got really, really sick, and I had to kind of watch him go through that sickness until I finally had to put him down. But I got one last night with him when I knew that he wasn't going to get better, and I had the opportunity to say goodbye and to let him know how meaningful he had been to me. And so while in that moment, which was one of the most painful moments I have ever experienced in my life, I understood that God could have allowed him to pass just instantly. He could have had a heart attack, any number of things, right? He could have just passed like quickly and shockingly and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to say goodbye and to express the things I needed to express. And because of how I'm wired, that would have been devastating in a way that would have wrecked me for a really long time, because I would have felt responsible. Like, there's so many things. Whereas because of the way that God orchestrated the situation, and here's the thing, people a lot of times might look at a situation, well, God loved you wouldn't have let your cat die. We live in a fallen world. Everything's gonna die. Everything in this world is passing away. It's all temporary. And so the kindness of God is not revealed in not allowing the thing to happen, but in how the thing happens. Because of the way he set things up to happen, I had the opportunity to know that it was coming, and to pay attention and to give it my focus until it was done. And that allowed me to say some things that I needed to say, and to be with him in his final hours. And it was through that truth, and that's why I say love is a truth and love is an attribute. Through recognizing the truth in that moment about what was happening, and about the fact that, like, he showed me all the things that he orchestrated for that moment, for the purpose of allowing me to go through that process that was going to be painful no matter what, but in a way that allowed it not to be crippling for me. In that truth, I experienced his love. Same thing happened when my parents and grandmother were killed in a car accident on Christmas Eve. And I won't go through all the details of that story, but it was a similar situation. The way God orchestrated the situation, I could experience his love through that truth. On the other side, his presence, interpreting his presence as love and not just intensity, that's the relational part of it. That came later. That took almost 20 years of walking with him for my mind to become renewed, for the way that I interpret love to be transformed and realigned, so that when I see love, I recognize it as love, or when I experience his presence, I experience it as love and not intensity. Because, like with my father, my experience of his presence was always intensity and correction. So when I got in God's presence, I couldn't interpret it as love. I interpreted it as intensity and as correction and expectation. And it took 20 years of walking with him for him to realign my soul to be able to properly interpret his presence as love. And so, like I said at the beginning, I don't know your situation or your relationship with the Lord, but I can tell you that in most cases, if you're not able to feel his love, it's because of one of those two things. It's because you're misinterpreting what love actually is as a feeling, and you have to get a revelation first of what it is, that it's a truth and it's an attribute, and then once you have that, asking the Spirit to help you heal the areas in you that are preventing you from being able to receive what's being given to you as what it actually is, because it's probably just being misinterpreted. So I hope that helps, and if you need me to expound on either of those, definitely let me know. But man, may the Lord meet you in such a material way that you are able to feel his love, because he absolutely loves you. Sometimes it just takes time to be able to interpret it.